As Brown drives, layup off the glass.
That's not the first time we've seen a superstar in green and white sacrifice his body.
Scoring net, knocked away. Ball game.
Welcome into another episode of First to the Floor. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. The Celtics are doing well, 6 in a row, but not without fault. Jackson Bauer is here to help us figure out what happened to sexy Missoula Ball. Jackson, how's it going, man?
Hello, mate. I think it's as sexy as it's ever been. Maybe you can tell me why I'm incorrect. Maybe I'm being blinded by just the W's in the column there. But no, man, loving life. The basketball's good. Cricket's good. I'm sure we'll get to both of these in depth later. But yeah, happy to be here, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. 6 in a row. It is hard at times to see beyond that, but there's a few issues that we'll get into. We've also got our New Zealand correspondent, Joe. Raised eyebrow, maybe a little bit more concerned. Joe, how's things?
I was just thinking, does Jackson just have a W kink?
I must.
Don't we all?
It's so strange.
Fetish. No, never mind.
I actually didn't mind the game. You know, like I'm gonna try and zig away from my usual my alleged skepticism. So I didn't mind it. I thought, it was
excited to hear that pivot, Joe.
Well, let's not get carried away.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, I'm in two minds about it. So maybe you guys can help me sort of reconcile how to feel about the game. So, you know, the Celtics win 102, 100, 6 in a row. That's great. Getting the wins, satisfying Jackson's W kink. But, you know, I think that because of the high expectations like for this team, some might feel shitty about this win because we didn't just easily defeat them with all of their injuries and their omissions and Marcus Smart being out and the good vibes before the game and all of that. But this Grizz team that had nothing to lose, no expectations of their own. They played free and they played hard. And we were far from our best, but again, we executed on both ends late in the game, which is a huge difference compared to last year. We're actually executing late in games, which is all that we essentially needed in the end there. And it's the plays to close the game that I think the best demonstrate how different we are from last year. For example, that Tatum post-up to a cutting Porzingis dunk, notably because we didn't have Porzingis last year, but we also had a very low rate of Tatum post-ups. So while it was an ugly game, we saw our new characteristics sort of ultimately shine through and help us win this one. That said, Jackson, I guess there's a fair bit to unpack, like I said, given those expectations, and I don't think that we met them today. So what were your main takeaways from this one?
Well, I almost put money on Memphis to win this game, honestly, because it's one of those like, oh, this is the team that's dominating everyone, and here's this team that's decimated by injuries on a back-to-back. Like, it just felt like it was just a certainty, and when everything feels like a certainty, I get like spider senses just going, oh shit, something's wrong here, and it started to smell like that game. I was like 2 years ago when we played the Timberwolves, and they didn't have anyone, and we got like finessed by like Jalen Noel and Nathan Knight and dudes who barely have jobs anymore, and we lost that game. So it started to feel like it was going that way a little bit. But I was like you said, man, the reason, like, I guess I'm not, to get to the point, not like concerned, is because the execution in the clutch and, you know, in moments when it really matters. It doesn't matter. Tatum might be off, Brown might be off. I've never seen Porzingis off. I'm sure it'll happen eventually, but we've just got the players who can just get the job done. And I think if it's not for some crazy ill-advised botched layup from Drew Holiday, we don't get that crazy final 10 seconds, and it probably feels like more like the Raptors game did, which was also close, but I guess you could say maybe wasn't as concerning. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. You guys can tell me otherwise, but like, I just thought it was, I agree with Joe. It was a super fun game. It was chaos, like from the off. Like Brown had a poster dunk like 5 seconds in, and that just sort of set the tone for a really crazy back and forth game. So I enjoyed it, and yeah, I'm not too concerned yet, so I guess you could say.
Yeah. Joe?
That's the NBA season. You got to win ugly sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and they'll get paid millions of dollars to play basketball. So you know they can all win. You know they can all win on any given night. Even even though they're trotting out old mate Pero Cameron's lost son if you know who Perry Cameron is.
I don't. Who are we talking about here?
We're talking about Kenny Lofton Jr. You know,
Okay. Oh, right.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
he's a big man. He's a big man.
He's not like the arse. He doesn't
all
suffer
right.
from that particular ailment.
No, he doesn't. But he suffers from another couple, and they involve giving up runs to the Celtics because I think we were looking to get a bit of separation there while he was on the floor, and then he got pulled for Jaren Jackson, and order was restored a bit. I just think he could. We just got to win ugly a few times. If it was like this every time, right against a poor team, then that would probably be more of a sign of concern. But I don't view. Maybe it's like I don't view it as a negative.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I view it as a positive, a massive positive. I just don't view it as a negative. So that puts me sort of ahead on the vibe scale compared to everybody else.
Interesting. The new Joe. I'm looking forward to getting to know the new Joe during this podcast. Yeah, I mean, one thing that was pointed out by much smarter people than me post game was that the Grizzlies, they weren't helping once we achieved dribble penetration. So for the Celtics, it's all about like drive and kick, or at least this new iteration of the Celtics. And there were no kick out options because they weren't helping on those drives. And you even saw guys like Derek White, whose rim reads are always like totally solid, get to the rim.
He had a shocker.
The defense just didn't collapse in the way that he's used to it happening 99% of the time. The kick-out options weren't there because they started like 5 fucking bigs. There was always like some huge body at the rim as well. And he just like had a brain explosion every time. And you can say that there were a lot of brain explosions in this game, particularly Drew Holiday trying to dunk that ball in the closing seconds of the game. But that game plan from the Grizzlies' perspective almost defeated the Celtics. Really, it was a really discombobulating and kind of an awesome plan given their lack of personnel. So it almost worked. I'm a little bit worried that it generates a bit of like helpful footage for our bigger opponents, our closer rivals, as far as like how to adjust your defense to confuse the Celtics. But that was an interesting game plan, and this is why I'm in two minds about it. We found a way to overcome. We executed down the stretch. We closed the game well. We had good clutch buckets from our key players. All things that we couldn't expect last year. And then just adding Marcus Smart, like the fact that he was present at the game and were like in front of him, exhibiting all of these new traits, I thought was an interesting dichotomy. Dichotomy is the right word, right?
Why
I
not
use that word correctly?
You go.
Yeah, Joe. Other takeaways from this game, like it was a tough shooting night. We talked about the lack of kick out options, and as a result of that, only 31 3-point attempts from the Celtics in this one. Like we just didn't get up a Missoula level amount of threes, and yet Hauser comes out, goes 5 for 7 from 3, and just like keeps the Celtics in this game over huge stretches for the second game in a row. We did the exact same thing against the Raptors. I guess like, given what we thought, like we're kind of getting to know this team still, right? And then we have these like pivots where suddenly we have a 1 or 2 game stretch where it's like, oh, hang on a second, this doesn't look like what I've just gotten used to seeing. So like, what did you see from the Celtics in this one as far as like, despite them not being their new selves, they still managed to pull out a win?
Yeah, I don't know if I've got a great answer here. It's just that they, despite a lot of things that really hurt their ability to generate a rhythm, well, those offensive foul calls really sap rhythm in a game.
Mm-hmm.
They sap rhythm, and obviously they give the ball to the other team. So it always makes the game a bit dirtier when the refs are calling it like that. I think I can't remember how many we had all up, but there was at least 8 because I remember Scal saying in the fourth quarter that's like 8 offensive fouls for the Celtics. I don't know how many points possession we're scoring this year. It's probably something like 1.2. So if you only have 3 offensive fouls, right, and the Celtics score 1.2 points on 5 shots, right, that's 6 points. And the game's just a bit different at different points in the game. Probably still would have been close, but would have been a little more comfortable. It didn't, even though we didn't do well, we weren't able to pull away. It wasn't like we had to rally. Right, so one of the key things from previous iterations of the Celtics is they had that little habit of like getting way behind and then doing the fake comeback.
Mm-hmm.
It's way better
too well.
Yeah. Fake comebacks suck. These aren't like super comfortable games, but like that's what you have to do to win, right? Like you have to make sure that you stay. I watched Formula One for like the first time ever last night. Man, they've got some stupid rules, but it did give like a reasonable analogy. That DRS thing, you've got to stay within a second or something.
Yep.
Right, and then you get to randomly go faster than the other guy. So stupid. But anyway, it's kind of what it's like in basketball, right? Like you've just got to stay in touch so you can use your DRS, Yeah. Because your DRS is going to come at some point. But the Celtics, they just never let that they stay close enough and they stayed a bit ahead.
The in-season tournament needs to bring some DRS in. They want to like make it that much interesting. Give them spoilers. Sorry, Joe.
make 3-pointers worth 4 or something like that for the other team. Like that's honestly it's so stupid. But anyway.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's like the absence of negatives more than a positive.
Yeah.
No, it totally does. I don't know, Jackson. You got any more thoughts on the game? It was such a messy game. It's difficult to kind of compare it to anything we've seen so far this year. It was kind of one of a kind.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, like I think if your regular season consists more of games that like aren't negatives as opposed to showing off the absolute pinnacle of your powers versus when you are like at the ceiling at the floor rather. I think that's about as good as you can hope for. Like obviously we have expectations that this team's going to be a championship contender. Let's be real. So when you don't play like that, obviously it sucks. But to answer your question, and I don't know if you're going to pivot into this now, but man. The difference for me was Porzingis. Brown may have underwhelmed a little bit. Tatum certainly did. On paper, it looked like Tatum had a fine game, but he was just really not involved. And those offensive fouls and turnovers were one thing. Yeah. But Porzingis just found he was so reliable scoring the ball. Those 6 blocks, obviously the one at the end, fantastic. There's a brilliant pass to Jaylen Brown for a backdoor cutting slam. JB just should be called the backdoor man. I don't know if that's a little on the nose, but I feel like that's just that's just where he's always there. Shout out Porzingis. Didn't get a tech foul tonight. This is a rarity. Close. So yeah, he did come close. I think Jalen ended up picking one when I thought it was going to be Porzingis, but I thought he was just massive for us. And I think without this game, I think if he had sat this game for whatever reason, it definitely wouldn't have gone as well.
Yeah, Joe, any thoughts on Porzingis?
Yeah. I think generally he's been the pleasant surprise for me of the season. He's just playing with a lot more physicality than I had typecast him with. And I sort of think, well, why didn't he work out with Luka? If he played like this with Luka, wouldn't it have all been fine? Wouldn't it? Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think he's just gotten better as a player. I think his utilization in Dallas was probably not the same as what we're doing here. But ultimately, I think he's just a more mature guy who's on a team that he recognizes he can win a title with. So he's just playing the role and being happy with it. That's just an opinion. I don't know. There might be something else going on, but I just think he's just a better player than he was then.
We talked about in media day joining the Celtics, he has adjusted his lower body workouts and his routine, and he's definitely made physical and mental improvements since Dallas. And then with Luka, obviously I don't know the guy, but his ability to
get onto that.
Maybe I'll flip over to close personal friend and our New Zealand correspondent Joe to talk about all things Luka Doncic. But his personality and his ability to gel with other players has been called into question already, right? Well, actually, I suppose you could say the same thing about the Jays, right? So it is interesting how he has gelled much better with them, but just that much talent on the floor, disallowing defenses to collapse on any one individual, everyone's going to excel. And we're seeing it top down as far as our starting lineup and even our top 7 is concerned, even Sam Hauser. So I do think Porzingis, it can't be like for like compared with the Luka Doncic situation for Porzingis. It is a completely different situation as far as how defenses have to look at him along with everyone else on the Celtics as well. But he gets the game ball in this one, absolutely. What did he have, 6? Was it 6 blocks? 7 blocks?
6, yeah.
6 blocks. 6. Absolutely insane, including the final block of the game in just that hectic sequence where there was an offensive rebound and what's his name? Santi Aldama put up his 15th three of the game. Thank God it missed, because that would have been way too chaotic for what I could handle. There's an offensive rebound from the Grizzlies, and then they got to put up another shot, and Porzingis blocks it, and like kind of like gestures, sort of semi-steps over the guy, I think, as he's like calling for a potential foul from the floor there. So very interesting. But yeah, the fit with Porzingis and the fact that there was a lackadaisical approach from practically everybody on the team, seemingly except for Porzingis in this game, and just to have that much talent, you can kind of half-ass the game, and someone will just kind of like somewhere between half-ass and full-ass the game, to use a technical term, and that'll be enough. That's an insane level of talent, and we keep talking about the differences from last year, but that's obviously a huge part of it, just the insane pool of talent.
Yeah, got a lot of top-end talent. For me, it's not about the pool of talent. It's about the shape the team sort of plays with. And I've never been my reason for like regulating the optimism is I'm not a huge believer in Missoula ball. I think it just really results in high variance offense at difficult times. And I guess the what I've seen from Porzingis is he's if he plays physically, defensively, that really helps us, and offensively, it gives some shape to the offense. That you've got to put pressure on the rim. Got to. And I feel like he's been our most effective means of doing that. Which because I'm a casual, I didn't know how he was going to do it, but it seems like he has. So yay.
Yay, indeed. We have Kristaps Porzingis, and he's very fucking good. All right, let's try and run down a run sheet here, guys, to try and pretend that we will wrap this thing up at some point tonight. We talked about who gets the game ball. It's definitely Kristaps Porzingis. Jackson, Joe Mazzulla sat both the Jays in the third quarter for like a not insignificant stretch of time. What do you make of that? Like, you watch the full game, like based on the rhythm of the game and when he pulled those two guys. Why do you think he did that?
It wasn't painfully obvious that they were missing, because I think we actually built the lead up. And to be fair, it did come back down to, I think, whereabouts they exited when they did come back in. But I know Brown had a couple of poor plays to start with, so I could see that's why he was being pulled out. Tatum coming out, I'm not so sure. Look, honestly, I'm led to believe it's probably just management, because we got a back-to-back tomorrow. So I'd like to think it's that and not, some other reason. And, no, cancel it. If it is something else, like maybe he's like trying to just coach them a little bit harder. Maybe he's trying to, like make a point about, some play that didn't go down or something that wasn't happening there. I'm not too sure, but to be honest, like, I don't think we missed them too much. Like, the stats might say otherwise, but just watching the game, I was just like, oh shit, where's Tatum? Where's Brown? Everything seemed to be going fine because, Hauser had our backs. But, I think the most simplest explanation is the correct one, as Terry Rozier, whatever we call it.
Occam's Rozier. I was about to invoke Occam's Rozier. I'm glad that you did.
I was drowning in Terry Rozierisms. So thank you. I think it probably just boils down mostly just to minute management, given this back to back tomorrow.
I was actually yarning to Luca about this, and he said,
close personal friend.
What was your thoughts?
He was like, no, it's because he was out late with him doing hookah before the game. Yeah, they did a flight to Dallas and had a hookah sesh with Luke, and that's what actually happened. Yeah, so it was a violation of team rules. So benched him for the vitals end of third quarter stretch.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, well, again, invoking Occam's Rozier, the simplest explanation is the most likely one, which I think it can be said for the full game. Like, if we were going to wrap the podcast now, it's like, it's the first of a back-to-back. This is a poor Memphis team missing most of their players. It's a long 82-game season. Like, even if it's just subconsciously and they're not actually discussing it like this as part of the game plan, like, can we come into this game and just kind of like piss our talent up the wall and hope that like what drips down back onto us is a victory? And like, they basically did exactly that. And they won. Like, that really is just what happened, right? They absolutely half-assed the game. And maybe, unfortunately, they won't learn any lessons from this. I'm sure that Joe Mazzulla and co will grill them in film sessions in the morning.
Just walked out with essence of victory around their jandals.
That's exactly right. Essence of victory should be the name of this episode.
Residue.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to like try and like break down a game when we've been watching this team for so long, these Jays led teams. You know that's what happened, and yet Jack's gonna cut you off there. I think
no, that's okay. All I was gonna say is like they were missing a lot of players and they got a terrible record. Like the Grizzlies don't look like a terrible team to me. The Wizards were way worse. And I know their records are comparable, but they were worse. We've played other worse teams this year too. Like, I mean, I haven't watched a lot of Grizzlies, but like, I bet they haven't gotten smashed a lot. I bet they've lost a lot of like games within like, 2 possessions or something like that. Cause they played us hard. They played us hard. So, and they came back from like 20 odd last night to beat the Spurs, who are again, aren't anything to write home about. But like, I think the sooner or later Memphis is going to shoot back up the West, table because based on the way they played, I thought they were pretty good. We might have sleepwalked through that game a little bit, and the talent disparity was just good enough in the end. But no, I think Memphis are better than their record suggests, even with all their injuries.
They've got a average margin of loss of negative 5.5. Jackson.
Oh, right. So is that bad, right?
There's probably just one really bad game in the mix there. So,
yeah. That's why our net rating's so good, because we won by 50 one time, right?
Yeah, we had that one. Well, we had the Pacers game and the Wizards game, and our net rating has just been like living off that, feasting off that ever since.
I'm gonna die on that hill. That's what's happening with the crisis of the universe.
Yeah.
Speaking of simplest explanations, Julius Rickles in the chat saying they probably ate barbecue all day before the game. Which, if you've ever tried to eat barbecue and do anything else afterwards, you know what Julius is talking about here. So again, simplest explanations. The referees in this game played a role, an unfortunate role, a role that no NBA fan wants to see, which is a dominant one in calling really ticky-tack fouls and really asserting themselves into the narrative of the game and a lot of stoppages. And it was a game, despite its sort of relative insignificance, it was an ugly game. It's not a game that we're going to sort of go back and watch anytime soon. And a huge part of that is the refs asserting themselves in this one. Joe, like, am I wrong thinking that the refs were unusually involved in this game?
I thought, we've queued up a few vids, Ben, just pertaining to the Jason Tatum shooting foul. But I think this is an example of like, have you guys ever heard there's some American judge who's like, I can't define what obscenity is, but I know it when I see it. And I feel like the NBA is just constantly trying to define obscenity instead of letting the refs call it when they see it. So this is an example, this Tatum thing. So I don't know, Ben, if you can queue up a couple of examples of Tatum shooting that sidestep going left in the corner.
Yeah,
just
sure.
Watch his right foot there. He was going left there, same direction. Watch it here. Watch his right foot. Watch his right foot.
Obviously not the game.
Watch that right foot. See that right
that's
foot?
That's the form.
Okay, watch this right foot here. Swing. Okay, we've got another one coming up. Okay.
No, that's it. But well demonstrated.
That's his natural shooting motion, which of course it is, because if you're moving hard to your left, your body's going to sway to counterbalance that, right? Anyway, we got this video review thing, which is to me it's just totally needless. They were reviewing what were they reviewing in the first place to check whether it was a 2 or a 3.
I think so.
Call it a 2.
Yeah.
Just call it a 2 and move on. Just make a flipping call, man. The NBA's got to stop trying to let the what's the other saying? Letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. So I feel like this is an example of it. Yeah. I hated that call.
We've got the clip of the call. Let's run it here very quickly.
Able to get where they want to on the floor.
Shooting 53% at the moment. Tatum against Zaire Williams. Step back 3, Tatum, no. And a foul on Zaire Williams.
Form is indiscernible from what you just showed. Yeah.
They're the same picture.
Yeah. Same guy. Same shooting motion. We got to the refs. We've talked about the Jays being sat in the third quarter. Okay, so on Tatum, you just mentioned Tatum. I think this is a good place to get into this a little bit. So it's only 2 games, and the way I'm positioning this is a little bit clickbaity. So like, pull me out of this, Jackson. But is Tatum sliding into slump territory? We saw 8 turnovers, 1 3-point attempt tonight. He wasn't particularly great or as prolific as we're used to him being against the Raptors. Also, yes, it's only 2 games and he's been fantastic and like a mainstay in the MVP conversation. And yet, you know me, I overthink these things. 2 terrible games. Are we in like sliding into slump territory?
Yeah. He's washed up, isn't he? I think the MVP's gone to his head and he hates sharing the spotlight. No, again, I'm gonna do the safe fence sitting answer, and you can call that being pulled out of the clickbait zone if you want. But 2 game sample size. He wasn't like yeeting up like 50 like 23s and like only hitting 2 of them this time. Like shooting 1 and going 1 for 1 is like really bizarre. But again, I think that just speaks more to the defensive schemes that the Grizzlies were running out on us, and maybe something else that I wasn't picking up upon. But he has been down the last couple games. Still won. I think the offensive fouls and the turnovers were getting him out of his rhythm a lot, but there's still multiple examples where he just was getting to the rim. Like he had a really like sweet dunk, I think, to start the third quarter. He didn't look particularly like bad to me. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but you look at like purely look at the box score, turnovers aside, it looks like he had a fine game. So, I mean, I think the proof's going to, if we're still, if this is a topic or if this is still a pressing issue post the Bucks game, and if that ends up being a loss, then yeah, I'm prepared to have that conversation. But I mean, even if he stinks the joint out tomorrow against Charlotte, I'm gonna wait and see what he does against the Bucks later this week before I make my mind up about that. But I'd say two road games, gritty opponents. It's definitely not a slump for me, and wins. Yeah, exactly. It's not a slump for me. It's just it's a slight deviation of his MVP-esque form that the last few games had.
I'm sorry, I'm just noticing Viom absolutely chewing his face off in the chat here.
He's got some opinions, Viom.
Appreciate him.
Viom, just for audio folks listening later, like we're just reacting to some mega comments in the chat. Viom, I didn't realize that you were from India, buddy. So apologies for the World Cup defeat.
Fire up, yeah.
It's all right. You get used to losing to the Aussies. It just happens.
For context, Australia won the Cricket World Cup. For the majority of people listening to the show who have no idea about cricket, Australia won the Cricket World Cup last night. We're all very happy, except for Joe and Viom in the chat.
I'm fine with it. I felt like India did everything they could. To put a slow wicket in place for the semi-final.
They did.
Were robbed. No, we weren't. But it's a big effort. Big effort just for those folks who don't know. Ground conditions play a big role in cricket, and so when you're playing at home, there's a big advantage. And cricket in India is very different from cricket anywhere else in the world. And Australia still just smoked them, So
it's a huge achievement. Absolutely.
Yeah. What were we
Jason
talking about?
Is Tatum in a slump?
Is Tatum slumping?
Is Tatum slumping? Oh, nah. I think 8 turnovers, 2 of which were offensive fouls. It just takes you out of rhythm. I think his handles looked a little bit loose lately, but overall, I've been pretty happy with his mentality. He's not he likes his high variance shots. They're going to come and go. So I don't know if I'd put him in slump territory yet. I think I don't know if we've highlighted it from. I don't know how you say it, like in Portuguese. Guilherme. It's like William, right, in Portuguese.
Okay.
Guilherme Tice just pointed out that that okay, I promise I'll make sense eventually. Just pointed out that he averages quite a lot against Charlotte. So
yeah, he does historically own Charlotte, which is true. So with Tatum in this game, 20 points, fairly efficient, 7 of 13 from the field, 100% from 3, albeit on only 1 attempt. Looking at his impact on the game across the box score and having watched the game, he was fairly solid. But it's the 8 turnovers and so many of them being off charges drawn as well was like the real glaring difference. We're so not used to seeing that. But I guess we talked about that from the whole team holistically as well, that the way that the Grizzlies were defending us, they sort of were drawing a lot of offensive fouls from the Celtics top to bottom through the roster. So maybe Jason Tatum as the key driver, the key drive and kick guy, particularly late in games, like he was maybe the major culprit, but everyone was being sucked into coughing up the ball that way.
Yeah, the real measure is how many bad decisions is he making, right? Bad decisions versus good decisions. A lot of his turnovers tonight weren't really like bad decisions. There's one random one where the Grizzlies rookie, he's a real wee man, and he just came out of nowhere and swiped it from him. You know, that stuff is not going to happen all the time. It's the bad decisions, over dribbling, getting yourself into a position where you shouldn't be, forcing something. Those are the types of things that worry me more than, you know, a few random turnovers. Tonight's game was just random, super random.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow. There's just so many like new and unsavory talking points for a win. You know, like he used to either like heavily criticizing the team, and that's kind of information that I'm being fed from watching and reading about the game is like it's criticisms, and yet it was a win. So it's hard to digest in that sense. We do have a Celtic player's debut to get to. We're going to get to a message from our sponsor in a second, but I will say that in the last week, 3 games or so, we've added 2 new win styles to the win catalog that we haven't had this season, right? So we had the signature win, right? Like we beat the Sixers on the road, Hospital Celtics. Yes, like they were coming off a back-to-back, but they've been great. Maxi's been great, and Embiid's been great. We were shorthanded, and yet we beat them handily. So we got the like quote-unquote signature win. And then I would categorize the Raptors game and the Grizzlies game in the same way, which is the gritty, play like shit, but find a way to win. So those are 2 new win styles that we can add to the win category, and we're going to be tracking this all season, adding things to the catalog. But it was nice to see, particularly the signature win added to the Celtics plate there this season.
That's a great way to think of it. I was thinking about like albums. You know, it can't just be all bangers on the album, right? Because then it's like, now that's what I call new music volume 40. You know, you gotta have some fillers. You gotta have some B-sides.
You can't all be Hit Machine 13 from 1997.
We're gonna have like interludes and like skits that just aren't funny, but only going for like 25 seconds. So
that's right, but it's all part of the texture of the album, you know, that makes it great. We can't just be at this emotional pitch where it's just, you know, living on a prayer, you know, for 82 games straight. You know, we need a little Tennessee whiskey sometimes.
Yeah. You know those Tool albums where it's just like ambient sounds between like those huge epic tracks?
Yeah.
All right, quick break for a word from our sponsor, FanDuel.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, thanks to the CLNS Network for presenting the show, and shout out to FanDuel for sponsoring it, along with all other shows on the CLNS Network. Guys, I want to get to Neemias Queta. I hope I'm saying that right. I think I've said every variation of that name, but he debuted for the Celtics in this game. I think that Luke Cornett is going to sleep well tonight. I don't think that Neemias Queta Jackson demonstrated anything that is going to ring alarm bells in Luke Cornett's mind. What did you see from Queta in this one?
Yeah, I got some notes here. It says no thoughts.
Yeah,
but I'll give you some content. He is coming off an injury that has kept him out for a while. So, and he had 5 minutes. So let's give him a little break. I think there will be games. There will be, he needs to have his moment where he plays the entire fourth quarter, a la like, the Wizards or the Pacers game, and, to show what he can really do. But yeah, no, I desperately need depth at the big man spot, because inevitably Porzingis will miss some time. Horford's going to miss some time. Cornet can only do, Cornet things. So yeah, no, I have hope that he's going to, he will be a bit better, but I don't think he's going to be cracking the rotation anytime soon. But happy for him. I love the number 88 on any jersey. It's what I wear when I play. So whether he's terrible or not, I like seeing the number 88 out there, man. So, I'm a fan of him regardless.
Wow, you wear 88 when you play basketball? It's
Hell
a
yeah.
highly obscure
Hell
number.
Yeah, it's like
really odd.
Yeah, it was 88. Yeah, well, the 88s it was Nick Batum and someone else I can't think of. But yeah, there's not very many of them. So when they show up, it's good.
Yeah, hell yeah,
Man, isn't that like the Chinese lucky number, right? Number 8.
Yeah,
I
well,
remember that
it's
right.
8 is the lucky number, so I believe double 8 is just like double luck. So there you go.
Yeah.
But hey, Doncic is 77, so one guy popularizing the double numbers. So yeah, name is Cater. Just be as good as Luka Doncic, and you'll be sweet, mate.
that's all it takes. We don't have to go long on this, Joe, but any Neemias Cater thoughts?
All that came to mind was I was talking with an old friend this weekend, and he referenced this meme that he'd seen, and it was about how like being a partner at a Big Four accounting firm is getting paid $600K a year to sit on Microsoft Teams, unmute your microphone at the end, say "yeah, nothing from me," and then remute it.
So everyone, bye.
Yeah, dream role basically.
Yeah, exactly. So nothing from me.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, I'll just say that he looked completely lost on defense. Like brutally so, and apparent to even the most untrained eye, which can be me at times. Just like literally like looking back to the bench mid possession, being like, where should I be? Only to be pointed to an open shooter in the corner or an open dump off, big in the paint, and to quickly scramble over to them slightly too late. Hence, his time on the court was very short. So what else can we get to here? Well, before we move on, because we haven't had you guys on since the preseason, I want to ask you guys sort of more at a macro level about Porzingis, especially because we're at the junction of the season where we just saw Marcus Smart, who of course was involved in the Porzingis trade. And I think it's a good time to ask you guys who we haven't heard from yet about, your thoughts now that we've got some sample size about that trade. I have a feeling I know the answer, but some good moments from this game. So speaking of Porzingis, the KP to JB connection, that's real. We saw them connect on either end to and from each other in this game again. We saw Jason Tatum post-ups in this game. Again, effective, a number of turnaround shots, which look to be money for Jason Tatum, but also passing opportunities that come from him being doubled in that situation. Despite this being an ugly game, there were some good moments. So are there any other good moments that you guys caught from this one before we get on to the Porzingis stuff?
A couple of good dunks.
It was dunk city for a while there.
Yeah. In a game that was like so random, and again, we all have deemed it to be ugly and probably not very rewatchable. It was a pretty exciting fourth quarter, at least. Like there was like on paper, it was everything that you could ask for, but because it like stunk so much of like Miami Game 7 2022 with that ending there, everyone's just kind of like, oh, okay, enough of that one, moving on, nothing to see here. So
yeah, there's a trauma, there's a level of trauma with Celtics fans that make these kinds of games difficult to enjoy.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like this is a trope, and so I've used at this stage, but like I think it bears is true here. It's like, hey, previous teams would have lost that game, and I definitely think previous teams would have just botched the execution. We botched the final layup anyway, but hey, it didn't cost us. But I think it would have maybe in the past. So no, overall, I'm happy with the win. I'm happy with the experience, as heart attack level as it was towards the end. But yeah, nothing to add from me.
Yeah, I think maybe we haven't really given enough credit to what happened on that go-ahead bucket. Because there was a lot going on that play. Like
the Grizzlies go-ahead bucket?
Sorry?
The Grizzlies go-ahead bucket?
No. We won the go-ahead bucket.
But they took the lead late in the game.
With like a minute ago. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
It was tied 100 all, and the bucket that put us ahead 102 to 100. Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying.
That was that was a really good double. Like Tatum could not see where it was coming from. He might have known. I think there was a little interaction between him and Drew after it happened, which leads me to suggest that Drew, like, maybe called out to him where the double was coming from. And then KP just kind of just got in the old slipstream there. And I thought that was a really good play for a lot of reasons. One, Tatum, like, not getting caught out there. And two, Porzingis moving off the ball. If that's what he needs to do to be effective, and he's been really effective diving to the rim. That's been really good. Been a really good feature of his game. So it was just, so if you're looking for positives there, right, at a high leverage point in the game, Tatum put pressure on the hoop, got a double, saw the double coming. There was adequate movement off the ball, and he was able to find it. So
or was alerted to the double, as you said.
I think he might have been. Like, I'd have to go back and, like, I'd love to know what happened, but there was definitely, like, Tatum definitely really acknowledged Drew after the play. I remember that. And I remember thinking, what did he say? You know,
might have just been like, regardless of what just happened, I just want you to know that you're awesome and I love you. Maybe. That's what I would say to Drew Holiday.
Probably.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, let's move on because we've got to wrap up at some point. I'm interested to hear from both of you on this. We all were really devout Marcus Smart stands, but I've at least sort of exercised some demons live on the podcast over the last couple of weeks. You guys, we haven't had the pleasure of having you on in that regard yet. So seeing Marcus today, it gives us an avenue to circle back on the trade. Jackson, I'll start with you. Like, what are your views on Porzingis' impact on the team 12 games in compared to what you think Marcus Smart would have given us in that same time? And then, like, where are you at now compared to where you thought you'd be? Because I think there was a lot of friction when the trade happened. Like, Smart's just going to be more impactful throughout the course of a season. And now we're seeing how much Porzingis unlocks this team. Where are you at now? And then, like, how does that compare to where you thought you'd be at?
Sure. Well, to work backwards, I guess my biggest concern at the time the trade happened was he's very injury prone. And where is, like, the defense on the perimeter going to come from? This is before we got Drew Holiday, mind you. Yeah. So it's very hard to compare the two of them because basically we did a like for like Smart for Holiday, like, after the fact. And, like, as much as I don't want to admit it, as much as Marcus Smart's still my favorite player, Drew Holiday is just that much better. Like, if you want to win a fight, you take Marcus Smart. You want to win a basketball game, get Drew Holiday. Like, I don't think that's, like, disrespectful or, like, you know, tarnishing Marcus Smart's legacy to say something like that. But you know, Porzingis, he's efficient. He's a much better rim protector than Smart is. Obviously, I think he averages like 1 turnover a game, whereas poor old Marcus is something at like 3 and a bit. So I just think we're getting so much more reliable, consistent output from him. And, you know, he's just his fit in the team. I didn't think it would be as seamless as it has. Like, it hasn't been perfect, obviously, so seamless might not be the right word, but, you know, it looks like they've all been playing together for longer than they have. And, you know, I think it's looking at Marcus Smart on the Grizzlies bench. This is going to be a really weird analogy, but stick with me here. Do you remember those TV shows? It happens every now and then. It's like a documentary where they take like a bunch of people from all walks of life into like an abattoir, and it's about, like, you know, the factory farming and the entire, like, you know, food industry and whatnot. Okay. And then they get the poor cow out, and then they like stun gun them, and everyone sort of has a little cry and whatnot. But then as soon as they start processing the carcass, it's like, oh yeah, it's meat now. So seeing Marcus Smart for the first time in a Grizzlies jersey, it was like, oh no, that sucks. But now he's just like a steak, hey, and we got to eat him, you know. So I'm still very personally invested in his personal success, career on the court and off the court. But if he's an opponent of ours, then to me, like, he's just another player. And, like, is that horrendous? Is that insane? I don't know. For me, I'm happy we have Kristaps Porzingis and Drew Holiday instead of Marcus Smart now.
Or Marcus Smart getting sent off to the works.
It's just a steak.
I warned you. I warned you. I don't know if that was an accurate analogy to make, but it's just what I thought. Looking at him, like, yeah, that sucks, but I'm over it now.
And this analogy, Brad Stevens wears white gumboots. I don't know if they do that in Australia, but in New Zealand, it's the white gumboots. It's freezing workers.
All right. So Jackson thinks. Okay. So the takeaway is that Marcus Smart is a steak. Weirdly, I understand where you're coming from with that. Like,
nice.
I do.
All right.
I do.
Cool.
Joe, can you take this anywhere else? Like, where do you go from
Jackson's just processed our grief, not unlike the way that that the unusable parts of the carcass are processed into sausage.
Carcass Smart. Yep.
Carcass.
What have I done? I shouldn't have gone there.
Uh-oh. We're off the rails here. We're off the rails here completely. All right. Can you attempt to process Carcass Smart so we can get through this segment? I'm broken, Joe.
I don't think you can.
Oh my gosh, that's so sad.
It is. But that's what I'm saying. The fact that this is where we're at, where it's like off-the-cuff jokes about Marcus, who was so near and dear to us. Suddenly we're calling him Marcus Smart.
But
Carcass Smart. It does. But it's so easy. It's so easy to throw those jokes out now. And that's... I was saying this on the last podcast. I feel a lot of personal guilt about being here with Marcus. Like, that's too easy to, like, jettison the sentimentality, right? Like, it's already gone. That's devastating. It's obviously hilarious, but it's devastating as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
It'll be different when we actually play him, and like, you know, it'll be a tragedy if he like is injured or just for whatever reason can't play at the Garden, and then you have to do it like a year after the fact, and it's a little it's not as passionate, you know what I mean? Like the same level that we had when KG and Pierce came back. Yeah, no, like to bring it back to some sort of like, you know, semblance here, I think we're just getting way more from Kristaps Porzingis that benefits this team compared to what Marcus Smart brought us, and my concerns about what we would be missing have completely been covered up by Drew Holiday. So that's my point.
Yeah, that's the takeaway.
Abattoir, yeah.
Yeah, like there's nothing left on the table. There's like, well, I wish, like, I miss this thing that Marcus brought that Porzingis doesn't have. Like, he just brings so much more. Again, feel guilty saying that there's not this longing for Marcus Smart, right? Like, I guess there's a personal longing in that, like, we called this show First to the Floor, and I don't think anyone has dived to the floor since Marcus Smart was traded, and that's tough to keep like the theme of the show alive. But other than that, like, I'm not thinking about him game to game.
Fair enough, man. That's a pretty good one, man. Carcass Smart.
All right, we'll move on. We'll wrap with this. So, previewing the Hornets game. So the Hornets, they're on a 4-game losing streak as Joe tries to keep it together. Their defense, the Hornets, is ranked last in the league, giving up 122.3 points per 100 possessions. The offense is ranked 18th. Suffice to say, the Hornets are dog shit. Do you see this, Joe, being a loss in any real sense? It feels like almost a guaranteed win, and yet in saying that, I feel like I've sealed the Celtics' fate in losing this game.
Shouldn't be. Should be sweet.
Yep. Cool. It should. It's really just that, right? It should be sweet. Jackson, I don't know. Anything else to add?
Yeah, now the Hornets are arse, man. Like, LaMelo Ball might have 30, 11, and 11, but that'll be it. You know what I mean? We are due a stinker that actually like costs us a win. So I don't think it's coming tomorrow. To be brutally honest, I think I think you might see them sit Jaylen Brown, you know, nursing, you know, his abductor or his groin or whatever is wrong. You might even see Porzingis sit out. You know, we've had one of those games already, and we beat, you know, what was the number 1 seed in the East. So, you know, I'm pretty sure starting Nemish Cater would still be pretty chill for us in this game. Not that we're going to do that, but I'm not concerned. This could age poorly, but I'm not concerned about the Hornets one bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Jackson throwing shade, but also it's like that's like a completely reasonable approach, right? Like we would have to be exceptionally terrible to lose against the Hornets under any circumstances. Again, I can't help but feel like I'm stealing their fate by saying that, but add in the fact that Jason Tatum has historically absolutely torn up the Hornets' semblance of a defense. Things would have to go very poorly. That said, they have just had Miles Bridges return, obviously under very clearly murky circumstances, given what's going on with him. I don't know. I don't know why I even brought that up, but it's just something that's going on with the Warriors. That's the Warriors, the Hornets. Excuse me. I don't know if that adds extra motivation to the guys as far as like we'd like to beat this scumbag, but it certainly adds extra motivation to me. But there's nothing like looking through the cleaning the glass profile, the NBA stats profile of the Hornets. There's nothing, absolutely zero, that jumps off the page as something that might be able to exploit any supposed weaknesses with the Celtics. So I have almost zero concern about this game.
Yeah, we always smoke them, eh? So they should be right.
Yep. Cool.
Harder than the analysis you come for, but you know.
Well, look, I suppose we can wrap it up there. Like we've covered a lot, given the what we have to work with here, which is a really ugly couple of games. These last two games, and potentially another ugly game coming up in less than 24 hours. Before we wrap up, guys, anything that we've missed? Anything else that you want to add before we wrap up the show?
Nothing from me.
Just enjoying the season so far. Again, we might stress over the minutia of underwhelming performances on the road against mid-table to lower table teams, but things are good, eh? Things are very, very good, and I'm going to enjoy them while they're good. Before it's like there'll be a spanner that's going to show up and just like send the season sideways at some point. Until that, I'm just going to enjoy it, and there's nothing to not enjoy at the moment, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice change. Like so far, the adversity that we were promised has still just come along with wins, which makes it a thoroughly enjoyable season. So hopefully we see that again tomorrow against the Hornets. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember to like the video, subscribe wherever, support the show, whether it be YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe, leave a 5-star review. Help us navigate the very difficult algorithm. We're going to be back on here tomorrow night after the Hornets game for another edition of Celtics Late Night. Jackson, Joe, love your work, guys. Until next time, go Celtics.
I love the Celtics!